Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Yvonne Lynch, Vice President of Client Relations at Bright Horizons, and I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar, Backup Care at Work, the Insider's Perspective. I'm very excited to be moderating today's event. I have to tell you we've had a terrific response with literally hundreds of you calling in to hear today's presentation. And I'd like to extend a very special welcome to the nearly 100 of our clients who registered for today's event, as well as the majority of you who are not yet our clients. During today's event, we'll hear how backup child and adult care works, and you'll hear about backup care from every angle, the employee, the employer, and the perspective of the dependents themselves. Before we start our program, I want to inform you of a few housekeeping items. First of all, if you're listening by phone, please be sure that you also follow the link on the registration confirmation email to see the slides on your computer. Also, if you experience any technical difficulties, please click the help button or type a question into the Q&A box so that our hosts can assist you. Today's webinar will last approximately 1 hour, and we encourage you to ask questions at any time by typing them into the question widget and clicking submit. We'll hold a Q&A session following the presentations. Also, we're going to conduct 3 polls today, and we hope that you'll also take a moment to evaluate our event before we close. One important point, to ensure that you can see the polls, you'll need to turn off your pop-up blockers. Finally, feel free to explore the widgets at the bottom of your screen. You'll find speaker bios, access to the Q&A feature, ways to contact Bright Horizons, and also a free download about the Backup Care Advantage program. So with our details covered, let's begin. Our speakers today are insiders from across Bright Horizons who will be providing us with some great insight into our Backup Care program. To start off, we'll hear from Mark Bernica, our Vice President of Operations for the Backup Care Advantage program. Next, we'll hear from Kim Calloway, Vice President at Horizons Workforce Consulting. And also today, we have with us Joan Stapleton, our Division Vice President of Backup Operations. Before we begin our agenda, I know there are a lot of people on the phone today who are not yet familiar with Bright Horizons. So I wanted to just tell you a little bit about who we are. Bright Horizons is a leading global provider of employer-sponsored work-life supports. We do child care, backup child and elder care, college admission support, and tuition assistance programs. We also provide work-life consulting services to our clients. We operate in the US, Canada, the UK and Ireland, the Netherlands, and India, and we partner with more than 850 employers to provide employee supports that help our clients improve their employee engagement and that promote productivity, retention, and ultimately employee well-being. The focus of today's agenda is actually backup care, and we're going to look at it from a number of perspectives. First of all, Mark is going to walk us through the employee perspective. He'll talk a little bit about the things that can happen in an employee's life outside of work that can influence their ability to be productive, and also what employees tell us they want from a backup care program. Kim will then talk to us about the employer perspective. She'll walk through some very interesting data collected from employers by Horizons Workforce Consulting's Lasting Impact of Backup Care study. Joan Stapleton will then take us through the actual care experience, looking at both center-based and in-home care experiences. And finally, I'll provide some insights into the Bright Horizons perspective. What have we learned over the last 22 years of providing backup care to our clients' employees and their families that will hopefully be helpful to you as you look to either implement or strengthen your backup care programs? So what is backup care? Well, by definition, backup care is a system that's used to provide dependent care when someone's usual care arrangements break down. This can be a last-minute breakdown, such as a nanny calling in sick, or a known gap in care like school vacation, or many other reasons in between. Backup care can be used really by employees of all ages, from new parents returning to work after parental leave, to parents of school-age children struggling with coverage for school vacations or when their children are sick, to employees with a need for elder care. As I mentioned earlier, Bright Horizons has developed and managed backup dependent care programs for over 22 years now. We provide services at 340 of our own Bright Horizons childcare centres, and in addition, we also provide access to an extended network of more than 2,000 centres and more than 900 in-home agencies, all of which meet our quality and training standards, and many of which are exclusively contracted to Bright Horizons. So that's enough for me from now. Having set the stage, I'll pass you over to Mark Bernica, the Vice President of Operations for Backup Care Advantage. And Mark is going to talk to us today about the employee perspective of backup care.
Thank you, Vaughn. Good morning or good afternoon to everyone, depending on where you're at. I'm really pleased to be here and glad that you can join us. I love talking about the employee perspective because it's such an important factor in a successful backup program. Over the last couple years, Bright Horizons has provided almost 1.3 million days of backup care, and what excites me about that number is that that's 1.3 million opportunities for us to learn about what matters to employees who are actually using the service. So that's really what I'm here to share with you. The reason the employee perspective is important is because the goal of a backup program is to enable the employee to get to work and be productive while he or she is there. And to do this, we have to address a few of their key concerns. So let's step into your employee's shoes for just a moment. By definition, need for backup care arises from a disruption in my usual routine. So school is closed, nanny's on vacation, a loved one is sick, probably come up with a dozen other scenarios that might require backup care. And depending on the situation, I'm going to have a whole host of non-work related issues or questions that I'm probably going to have to deal with. But one major question that's going to pop in my head fairly quickly is essentially, what do I do about work? Can I go to work? Should I go to work? Of course, there's sort of a subset of considerations that are in my mind as I'm debating whether I should go to work, and some of those are, what are my options for care for my loved one? Do I have good options? How hard is this going to be? Is it more of a hassle than it's worth? What's it going to cost me? And then, of course, another one is, can I trust that my loved one is in good hands? And that last one is really an important question, not just in terms of me making the decision to go ahead and go to work because I have care, but in terms of my productivity while I'm at work, because if I trust the care that they're receiving, I'm able to focus on my work and not have to distract myself worrying about my child or my loved one and having to check in. Bright Horizons solution is really built to address these concerns so that your employee can come to work. We start by arranging care easy. We take a one call does it all approach. So put simply, you call and request care. You can also do this online, but it's a 5-minute phone call. That's it, you're done. You can get on with the rest of your day. Prepare your other children for school, prepare yourself for work, etc. From there, our consultants coordinate the request. So we're going to match your specific care needs with the right care provider. We're going to coordinate the logistics of the care, take care of payment, all those things that you would have to do on your own if you were doing this. And then we'll call you back with your reservation to confirm your reservation. And in an urgent case, this can happen in less than 30 minutes. Just a tidbit here. We fill on average over 98% of all of the requests that come in. We're able to confirm those. That includes 95% of the requests that come in same day, so urgent requests. So really, your employees have a high level of confidence once they call us that they can get care and they can proceed with their day as planned. At that point in time, your employee takes their child to work, takes their child to the center, or they wait at their home to greet the caregiver when they arrive. And that's pretty much it. The full service approach I think that we're describing here is really important to getting employees to work, especially in an urgent or a same-day unplanned situation. So as you might imagine, if I wake up in the morning and my child is unexpectedly ill and can't go to work, can't go to school, if I have to spend an hour or two scheduling care, figuring out who's going to take care of them and where to go, in lieu of getting myself ready for work, chance of me getting to work or being productive when I get there are greatly diminished versus a 5-minute phone call. 5-minute phone call. We also follow up on 100% of our care sessions with a survey, and we do this really to ensure that everything went well, so that if a problem wasn't reported to us proactively, we can catch it reactively by people telling us that there was an issue. Fortunately, there really aren't very many problems, but the other added benefit to the survey is that we get firsthand feedback on what's important to employees. Overall, for a program, we know it has to be easy to use. We have to have high-quality care options in convenient locations. Flexibility in this case really refers to the ability to meet unplanned needs. So it doesn't do me that much good if I have to schedule this 2 weeks or even 2 days in advance. I have to be able to call and pretty much get immediate assistance. And then regarding affordability, employer-sponsored or subsidized plans are far more likely to be used than those that are primarily employee pay. We say call center here, but we're really talking about customer service. This is a stressful situation, or it can be, for an employee. And so it's really critical that the people interacting with that employee understand the urgency and the importance and have good follow-up. I think the other key note here is that it's important for the employee to be able to talk to a person. Although we have a website and many of our customers and employees use our website to schedule care, care for a loved one is an important decision, and a lot of times people just want to talk to somebody about it. Last year alone, our contact center took more than 1 million phone calls. And then I think the other question that's on people's mind is really about the importance of having confidence in the quality of care. So in the in-home care, security is really a paramount concern. All of our caregivers pass extensive background screening and background checks. They're all employed by local agencies, so they have local management on site or in the location in that area if something does happen, and they're not contract workers, they're actual employees. And then those agencies themselves have actually gone through a rigorous selection process just to be in our network. So we have several layers there of screening both of the employer and the employee before we send anyone out to anyone's home. In terms of centers, interesting thing that we found is that the way that a child is welcomed when they arrive really sets the tone for the child's day. It goes a long way towards setting the employee at ease so he or she can concentrate on working the rest of the day. And so we put a great deal of effort into making sure that our centers are prepared with the right information they have in order to welcome that child and have a good first experience so that employee can do that. This probably isn't a comprehensive list, but based on the 80 to 100,000 survey results we get annually, this is a good summary of the core considerations that employees tell us they have when using a backup program. With that, I'm going to turn it back over to Yvonne.
Thanks so much, Mark. That was great information and great insight into what's important to employees in a backup care program. Before we move on to our next speaker, we're actually just going to take a minute to conduct the first of our polls. So our first question is this. When surveyed by Bright Horizons, what percentage of respondents reported that Backup Care Advantage was either the best or among the best benefits offered by their employer, excluding health care benefits? So you have a choice of one of four options there. You can just click on your answer and submit it. And while we're waiting for your responses to the poll question to come in, I do just want to remind you to please submit questions for our Q&A segment. So again, you can do that at any time during the presentation by typing them into the question widget and clicking submit. Okay, so let's take a look at our results from the poll. And there you go. So you're right, we've got a very smart audience here today. The answer is 77%. So obviously, as Mark spoke about, the BUCA program is truly a benefit that's highly valued by employees. Okay, so with that, we're going to take a look at the employer perspective. I'm going to hand you over now to Kim Calloway, who is Vice President at Horizons Workforce Consulting, which just completed an updated study on the lasting impact of backup care. And Kim is going to highlight to us some of the findings from that study, which really speak to the reasons that an employer would choose to offer a backup care program. So Kim, over to you.
Thank you, Yvonne. So the answer to the poll question you all just completed is just one example of the findings we'll discuss today. from a study we completed in collaboration with Dr. Russell Matthews from Bowling Green State University. We invited backup care users from the previous 6 months to complete an online survey. We heard from over 5,000 respondents that represent over 400 organizations from across the country. The survey respondent demographic profile indicates that Backup Care Advantage is an equitable support given that respondents' household income ranged from less than $50,000 to greater than $300,000. So what that tells us is that whether your workforce has lower wage, perhaps call center employees, or you are in a law firm with law partners who have a higher income, you can expect that this service will be of value to them because dependent care breakdowns can happen to anyone. And as Mark talked about earlier, typically the Backup Care Advantage program is structured so it is affordable to anyone. It is also interesting to note that 2/3 of respondents have at least 5 years tenure with their employer. These employees represent the important intellectual capital that organizations need to retain to be competitive. Therefore, supporting their productivity and engagement is critical. In the past 6 months, 87% of respondents reported that the Backup Care Advantage program allowed them to work on a day they otherwise might not have been able to. For those who utilized the care for child care breakdowns, they saved an average of 5 work days in the past 6 months. There was one additional finding that was very interesting to us. Backup Care Advantage also saved the employee's spouse or partner 4 work days in that same time period. If you have not experienced it yourself, I'm sure you've heard conversations something like the following. Jenny's school just announced that there is no class tomorrow due to the snowstorm that's predicted. I can't take off work due to the client presentation. It's your turn. And so begins the negotiation between spouses and partners about whose work responsibilities are more important and can't be missed. So it's easy to see how the Backup Care Advantage could positively impact both the employee and their spouse and partner. It can reduce the stress in the household and actually get both adults to work. Now thinking about elder care responsibilities. For those respondents who utilize the Backup Care Advantage program to care for an elderly or adult loved one, they saved an average of 6 days in the past 6 months. From survey comments and from focus groups that we've conducted in the past, we often hear stories that include that unexpected phone call where the elderly loved one is suddenly very ill or has taken a nasty fall. Although these situations may not happen often, when they do, the event usually takes more time to resolve as compared to a child care breakdown. The survey data illustrates the critical impact backup care has on employee productivity, given that 92% of respondents report that the support positively impacts their ability to concentrate while on the job to be as productive as possible. And when we asked the question another way, we found that 99% of respondents said that Backup Care Advantage was important in helping them complete their regular work responsibilities. It is also interesting to note that 70% of respondents reported that Backup Care Advantage positively impacted their ability to volunteer to do things that are not normally required of them. So for those of you who are supervisors, think about the impact an employee has on your overall area of responsibility or your team when he or she is willing to step up and voluntarily handle a project that is not in their standard job description. It is this discretionary effort that we all desire, and it can mean the difference between just mediocre work or an outcome that is unique and creative. Finally, respondents reported that each day of backup care that they utilized actually saved them 16 hours in work time. So this finding intrigued us. The survey comments provided more explanation. Respondents reported such things as not having to call around to multiple providers and not having to spend time checking provider credentials. And this all connects to what Mark just talked about in terms of what we've learned from the users from the satisfaction surveys. So not only does backup care get them to work on the day the service was needed, it also saved them another day of work when trying to secure the care. Now let's turn our attention to retention. If you'll remember, nearly 2/3 of respondents to the survey have 5 or more years tenure with their organization. So these are the employees that are critical to the success of their employers. 95% of respondents reported that backup care would be important in their decision to change employers. What's interesting is that percentage increased to 98% for respondents who are in the sandwich generation, so those who are responsible for a young child as well as an adult loved one. I can share from personal experience with living with my parents as well as being the mother of a preteen that any support that my employer provides me is greatly appreciated. Just between the planned school closures and the very frequent doctor's appointments for my father, I have to admit I'd really struggle without the support. Therefore, having an employer like Bright Horizons who acknowledges and provides resources for me to handle my responsibilities outside of work, frankly, is one of the critical reasons that I have remained with the company. Let's consider another vulnerable time in an employee's life, when they return from family leave. We all know that turnover can happen if that transition back to work does not go well. While 77% of female respondents reported that backup care was important in their decision to return to work, just over 2/3 of male respondents reported the same. So again, this data speaks to the equity and the wide-reaching impact of backup care. Employee engagement is a critical component of a thriving and growing organization. Given that many employers needed to trim their workforces to remain viable during the recession, employee engagement has never been more important. In addition to enhancing employee productivity, 90% or more of our survey respondents reported that the Backup Care Advantage program makes them more likely to recommend their organization to others. Employee referrals are often a very important component of any recruiting strategy. Referrals from current employees often result in candidates who are a good cultural match in addition to having the technical skills necessary for the job. Employer of choice is a designation that most organizations aspire to, even if it's just locally or in their specific industry. In the execution of dependent care needs assessments over the past 3 years, our team has consistently heard from our client leadership interviews that they have concerns over hiring and retaining the right people in those key positions that are critical to the organization's success. So employer of choice is something that most organizations are very concerned about. 90% or more of respondents also reported that the Backup Care Advantage program positively impacted several measures that influence their ability to be fully present at work and to contribute to their potential. Specifically, backup care helps respondents manage their overall stress and actually reduces the stress they experience in managing their work-life balance. Respondents also report that Backup Care Advantage provides a place where their child feels safe and well cared for, which also connects to a reduction in stress. So how many of us have experienced that rock in the pit of your stomach when you're dropping your child off in a situation where he or she doesn't feel comfortable? They may cling to you or give you that dreaded look that tells you all is not well in their world. That rock in your stomach can stay with you all day long and makes it nearly impossible to concentrate. Having a backup solution where your child feels comfortable can make a significant difference in your engagement throughout the day. So now that we've reviewed some of the impact data survey respondents reported as a result of the Backup Care Advantage program, we can more clearly understand why 77% of them said that the program was the best or among the best benefits that their employer offered, with the exception of medical benefits. One survey respondent summed up the impact well with the following statement. Anybody with young children knows that when a regular child care is unavailable, it automatically puts one's life in crisis mode. Being able to work with my employer to find backup care during this time of crisis helps me feel more appreciated and valued, making me much more receptive to added responsibility, thus increasing my productivity and overall quality of work. Now, it's also important that we discuss a key variable in our study findings. As I mentioned previously, the respondents reported that Backup Care Advantage saved them 16 hours for every day of care that they utilized. So additional insights regarding why they had this additional savings can be found on this slide when we consider the other forms of backup care support available to employees. We asked the respondents to compare the Backup Care Advantage program to other methods of securing care that they had previously utilized. 3/4 or more of respondents reported that the Backup Care Advantage program saved them time compared to references from family and friends, compared to an employer resource and referral, as well as compared to a web-based site. This is not surprising given that each of these three alternative sources of backup care information requires the employee to take several additional steps before they secure the provider. And Mark explained to us previously that it really does take one call with the Backup Care Advantage program. Finally, nearly 2/3 or more of respondents reported that the Backup Care Advantage reduced the stress associated with securing care. Again, giving these differences in the process of securing care between Backup Care Advantage and the other three sources of information, these findings connect with all the other data points that we've discussed in the last few moments. So that's just a few highlights from the study that we've completed, and we'll be happy to share the full study with you soon. So Yvonne, back to you.
Thanks, Kim. That's really some very compelling data there that really speaks to the reasons that an organization might consider a backup care program as part of their employee benefit package. So thanks for going through that. That actually leads us to our next poll question for our audience. So that question is, do you now or have you ever worked for an employer who offers backup dependent care? So again, just please click on your answer. It's an easy one this time, just yes or no. And while we're waiting for the responses to come in, I can tell you we've already received quite a few questions, and we'll do our best to respond to as many as we can today, but please keep them coming in. Just submit through the question widget at the bottom of your screen. And I'd also like to let you know that a link to a PDF of the slides and a video of today's event will be emailed to you in a few days. And from that link, you'll also be able to access our exclusive white paper, Backup Care at Work, the winning case for employers and employees. Okay, so we're going to take a look at our poll results. And yeah, it looks like just over 60% of you work for companies that already offer backup dependent care programs. So that's great. Again, just a testament to how important it is to both employers and employees. All right, so we're going to move on now to the care experience. Our next segment is going to be delivered by Joan Stapleton, our Division Vice President of Backup Care Operations. Welcome, Joan.
Thanks, Yvonne, and good afternoon, everyone. And I'm very glad to be able to share with you the experiences of both center-based care and in-home care for children and adults. There's a saying that goes something like, when you have a child, your heart goes walking outside of your body. And this is so evident when you see that first-time parent bringing their child to a center or using in-home care. It's tremendously hard to leave a child or a parent with somebody you don't know, even if your colleagues have had a good experience. Leaving your family member is very different. We understand employees will have many questions specific to their own situation. Our care providers in all settings are sensitive to employee concerns, and will focus on extending a thorough introduction and a warm welcome that sets the tone for the day of care. They will communicate with the employee throughout the entire process. As I share information about the different settings of backup care, you will hear lots of commonalities in practices. If using center-based care, we encourage employees to schedule a center tour or even a call with the director if possible before they need care. Directors can answer those specific questions parents have and also share what to bring, what a typical day would be like, and refer the parent to the center website to see information about the teachers. When you choose center-based care, you can expect a world-class welcome. We know that the parent and child probably already had a hectic day and likely a long commute, so we'll be there to welcome you by name, and if it's your first time in the center, we'll escort you to the classroom and introduce you to your primary caregiver. We welcome parents to stay as long as they wish to help their child with the transition to the center, but understandably, it's usually just a few minutes. Our teams are very skilled at helping children and adults feel comfortable in a short period of time. And you'll notice the center is prepared for your child's arrival. Their name is on the welcome boards, on their cubby that stores their belongings, on cribs and baskets, and that hold our bottles and food. Classrooms are designed to be exciting and engaging environments that capture a child's interest immediately, which helps with separation and transition from parent to center. You may notice large, colorful fish tanks, which are very soothing for children to watch or feed the fish. And you'll also notice some very big fish, too, since they get fed so often. It is comforting for a child to see something familiar at the center, and often parents will use this opportunity to set a transition routine to say goodbye, some hugs and kisses, and I'll see you later. From the very first time the child arrives at center-based care, the caregivers begin to observe them and take notes on the child's interests and development. So the next time the child visits, they remember that your toddler loved the fire trucks. They can be sure the fire trucks, the fire hats, and hoses are prominently displayed in our dramatic play area, ready for your child to notice when she walks in. And perhaps your school-ager loved chess and dancing. They can be ready with a chess tournament for that afternoon and the latest dance computer program that the kids are into. We know that parents are anxious about how their child is settling into the center, and caregivers will ask if it's okay to call or to text the employee during the day to give an update. They will send over a photo of the child engaged in an activity, and parents tell us they really value this practice. And it is fun to see their child engaged in activities they may not do at home, like making Play-Doh, painting, cooking, or even a science experiment. One of my favorite quotes a father shared about an infant caregiver was, "You make me want to be a better father. I learned so much from watching you and hearing you speak about my baby. I didn't know I should be reading to my baby so soon. And by pointing to and naming objects and signs on my way home will help my child speak and eventually learn to read. I am new to this, so many thanks." There are dates during the year that are referred to as peak times the center is especially filled with children, since many school districts are off, such as the week after Christmas or summertime. Teachers plan really exciting curriculum, and they post these activity calendars on their websites so parents can see and share the excitement with their child. It is not unusual for school-age children to say to their parents something like, "Can I come back next Tuesday? My new friend will be here and they're having a talent show. I'm going to bring my magic tricks." We love children to be excited about the activities in center-based care, since we know it makes it so much easier on the parent knowing their child is happy and having fun, and they can be productive while at work. The final point I want to make about center-based care is that all employees receive a parent satisfaction survey after they use the center. And I'm always thrilled to share the wonderful feedback that is specific to our caregivers with them. And I review with center teams areas that parents indicate we can do a better job. We take all feedback seriously, and our goal is to make continuous improvements. So many of the same elements that make center-based care unique and wonderful are also best practices for in-home care. We understand the employee may be uncomfortable the first time a caregiver comes into their home. The employee is welcome to ask for a meet and greet so that they can get to know the caregiver before the actual day of care. It's not unusual for the employee to work at home during the first day while getting to know a new caregiver. It gives them peace of mind that their dependent is being properly cared for, while they also have a productive day in their home office. For any in-home care assignments, the caregiver will call the employee to introduce themselves, share a little bit about their own background and experience, and gather information that they need to care for your dependent. They will ask about the daily routine, the care requirements, medication that the adult needs to be reminded to take, perhaps directions to your home, bus or train information, or available parking, and answer any other questions the employee may have for them at that time. The caregiver will arrive at the home at the agreed-upon time, so a short transition can take place. The employee can introduce them to the dependent, the family pets, show them where the kitchen and bathrooms are located, and quickly go over anything that was not discussed in the introductory call. And knowing a bit about your dependent helps the caregiver to quickly connect with the child or adult. For child care, the caregiver will bring some age-appropriate books, maybe bubbles and games to engage the child, to ease the separation from parents, and also be prepared with some fun activities like an art project or an I Spy nature walk for later in the day. For adult dependents that don't need as much one-on-one care, the caregiver will look for opportunities in which they can be helpful to the family, such as load the dishwasher or bring in the mail. Many of the adult dependents just need companion care, so sitting and chatting with the adult about the latest news, over a cup of tea, or doing a puzzle together is a welcome experience. And once the family gets to know the caregiver and they find they're a good fit for them, they could request the same caregiver again for future dates. And as incentive-based care, a best practice for the in-home caregiver is to email, text, or share a photo during the day to reassure the employee that all is well at home. And at the end of the day, the caregiver will give either a verbal or a written report to the employee as to how the day went and any pertinent information the employee needs to know about their child or adult dependent. And again, just like center-based care, an employee satisfaction survey will also be sent following in-home care, so we can receive feedback about the caregiver and any suggestions for improvement. And I'll end by sharing a quote regarding adult care. "The care my mother has had after her fall has been excellent. I even had follow-up calls to inquire about her diet, ambulation, and health. Thank you so much for caring. You're magnificent, and I will recommend you to every one of my coworkers." And I'll now pass it back to Yvonne.
Thanks so much, Joan. It's really great to hear about the experiences of the dependents who are actually being cared for through these programs. Before we move into our final section, we do have one last poll question for you, which is, what % of companies in the Working Mother 100 Best companies offer backup care? So again, if you can hit on your selection and hit submit. And while those results are coming in, I want to put out one last call for questions, which we'll have some time for at the end of the presentation. And also, again, just to remind you that at the end of the presentation, there will be a short survey about the event, and we'd love if you would take just a minute to answer that. Okay, so back to our poll. And the results are, yep, looks like most of you answered correctly. More than 75%, in fact, 86% of the Working Mother 100 Best offer backup care. So again, a benefit that ranks high for both employees and employers. All right, before the Q&A begins, I'm going to spend just a couple of minutes talking to you about the Bright Horizons perspective. I've been here at Bright Horizons and in the Client Relations Department for nearly 6 years now, and I can tell you confidently that our clients and their employees love this program. Many of our clients have been with us throughout the evolution of the backup care program over the last 22 years. As a vendor, we're very proud of our greater than 97% client retention rate and our 98% backup user satisfaction rates. We take our commitment to client partnership very seriously, but something that clients often tell me impresses them is feeling that Bright Horizons doesn't just talk the talk, we also walk the walk in the commitment that we show to our own employees. And the proof of that really is the fact that we've been named to the Fortune 100 list of best companies to work for 14 straight years now. As far as the Backup Care Advantage program is concerned, and as you can tell from the quotes on the slide on your screen here, people become very invested in their relationship with Bright Horizons and our backup program. Why do we think this is? Well, as a parent and a user of backup care myself, I can tell you that it really comes down to peace of mind that you really can only get when you know that your loved ones are safe and secure with their caregivers. That peace of mind comes when you feel confident about the quality, the consistent quality of the backup programs that your employees have. So for the employee, it's knowing that there is support available 24/7. Even if their child wakes up sick in the middle of the night, like Mark talked about earlier, knowing that they can pick up the phone and talk to someone live who understands their needs and who can help them navigate their options, and then go do all the legwork and secure and confirm the care on their behalf. That peace of mind right there removes a lot of stress for that employee, allowing them to be there for their employer when you need them. For both the employee and the employer, peace of mind also comes from working with a provider who has the highest standards of care based on decades of experience, who hold ourselves and our extended network partners accountable for those standards. So I've mentioned the white paper that you'll all receive in the follow-up to today's event. And in that white paper, you'll find information about the 10 pillars of high-quality backup care programs that Bright Horizons feels strongly are all must-have components for a successful program that will meet your organizational goals for years to come. I won't walk through them all right now. You'll have time to do that yourself when you download the document. But I will perhaps touch on a couple that we haven't spent a lot of time on yet today. So I would say that experience is a must, and not just experience making connections to providers, but direct experience in the actual provision of backup care. And of course, having the confidence in that the network is far-reaching enough to be able to cover all of your employees, regardless of where they live or work, ideally giving them multiple options for care. We haven't talked about co-payments yet, but we have found that co-pays should be affordable to all members of the workforce. Co-pays that are too high provide a barrier to use, and it needs to be affordable to everybody, because that can negatively impact the employer return on investment if not. And of course, there should be minimal risk. Your employees need to know that the caregivers caring for their loved ones have been screened and background checked, and that they're actually employed by the agencies in your network, not just contractors or per diem workers. And as an employer, you want to be confident that your program provides solid, comprehensive insurance and full indemnification against any claims. So again, the white paper will be available to you to download in the next few days, and that will go into more detail on all 10 pillars, and you'll have contact information to reach out to it as well if any questions should arise from that. So with that, I'd really like to take the last few minutes and hand it back to you. I've seen lots of great questions come in over the last 45 minutes or so. So I am going to, thank you. I have the first one here. And this is going to Mark. Mark, the question is, can you explain your staffing process and specifically how quickly you can find a care solution?
Sure, that's a great question. So I'll start with the last part of that. When we need to, we are able to find a care solution a lot of times within 30 minutes. So obviously the more time we have to fill a case, the better. But 30 minutes for somebody who calls in say in the morning and needs to have care that day is a fairly typical turnaround time. Right. Our staffing process is we have first we're going to find out what the needs of the employee are. Once we have that, we have a system that will match that employee's needs with caregivers or centers in their area. And depending on what kind of care they're looking for, obviously we're going to look at different things. In-home, a lot of times, is it adult care? Do we want to send somebody who has that type of experience? Is it an infant? Do we want to send somebody who has that type of experience? And then obviously with centers, location is a big issue. But we'll take those preferences and needs into account, and then we'll we can either do it through our system or over the phone, but we'll confirm that care with our network providers and then call the employee back.
Great. Now, Joan, I want to ask you, you had talked about peak times in centers. So as it relates to the staffing process, can you talk a little bit about how that works for peak times in centers for center-based care?
Sure. Peak times being maybe the day after Christmas when all the public schools are off. We make sure that all of our centers are staffed so that we can take the maximum amount of children into any of our programs, and that we're ready and there to care for you.
Great. All right, thanks, Joan and Mark. So my next question comes from Mary. Mark, this is going to you as well. So the question is, with in-home care, are there concerns from employees about a stranger coming into the home, and do employees actually use in-home care, and what precautions are taken with in-home care providers?
Another great question. I think, as I mentioned earlier, so it's absolutely a paramount concern. People are wondering about having, essentially a stranger come to their home, and so they ask a lot of questions about that. And again, I think we take it very seriously in terms of making sure that we're using the highest quality agencies in an area. Again, with the amount of care that we provide, we have a pretty good visibility into who those high quality agencies are, and then we have a screening process to ensure that all the employees of those agencies are certified and don't have anything in their background that would indicate a problem. And then of course we do an audit of the providers as well to make sure that they're keeping up with all of the certifications that they need. So we take a lot of proactive steps from that perspective. Employees still definitely have concerns at times. It's one of the reasons it's really helpful for them to be able to talk to us. And the other thing that we'll offer is to talk to the caregiver before they arrive at their home. The caregiver will give them a call, assuming they have advance notice. We'll give them a call, say, the night before to introduce themselves, ask any questions, and the employee can do the same thing. And if the employee really has concerns, they can even set up a meet and greet in person with the caregiver before they arrive at their home. So those are some of the options that we provide to make people feel comfortable. And people do actually use in-home care. It's probably right around a third of all the care that we provide is in-home care.
Great. Thanks, Mark. So our next question is from Lisa, and I think I'll take a stab at this one, and then maybe, Mark, you can help me out if I don't cover everything. But the question is, can you guarantee 100% coverage for my employees? So our goal is absolutely to be able to provide coverage for all of your employees, no matter where they live or work, and also to be able to give them as many options as possible. So what we do is through the initial conversations with the organizations, we will actually run a match of your employees' home and work locations against our entire network to test the breadth and depth of the network. And then if we do identify gaps, we work to try to fill those as soon as possible. So hopefully before the care actually begins for your employees, or certainly as soon as possible afterwards. So Mark, maybe you could talk a little bit about our provider relations team actually and how they work to do that.
Sure. Yeah, our provider relations group actually has a dedicated function for provider recruiting. That their sole job is to ensure that we have enough providers in areas where we have employees that we need to serve. So anytime we bring on a new employer or an existing client adds a new office or hires some new employees in an area, we match that against what our network looks like and what our coverage looks like, and then we'll go out and actually find providers in the area that meet our qualifications to make sure we fill that gap. So we're pretty proactive with that in terms of making sure that we have enough coverage in advance. Try not to react and get a call from somebody who we can't serve. It doesn't happen very often.
Right. And just to add a final point, as well as all of that, we do have an element of our programming called My Care Assist, which actually allows employees to source care from their own personal networks and be reimbursed. So that can be used in situations where there are gaps as well. But as Mark said, it actually doesn't happen very often. Okay, so our next question is for Kim, and it comes from Keith. And he's asking, what was the single most surprising or interesting finding from the study that Horizons Workforce Consulting did?
Okay, I'm going to give two because I love data so much, it's hard to come with just one. So I talked quite a bit about the fact that the respondents said that they saved an average of 16 hours for every day of backup care used. And that was very surprising to us. We have done this study a couple of times now, but this was the first time we asked them how many hours of work time that they saved. So we dug into that data a little bit to understand where that was coming from. And again, it was the fact that it's the ease of process. They realized how much time they could have spent securing the care, and that just didn't need to be spent, and they didn't have to use their work time on the phone, et cetera, trying to track down a care arrangement. I think the second interesting thing to me was regarding the percentage of males who said that the backup care was important in their decision to return to work. That concept of returning to work has traditionally been a female issue. But we see that 2/3 of the males appreciated that as well. So even if it meant that the male spouse or partner was the one who may have been on maternity leave, the fact that they were able to utilize that care was very important to their family. So that just reinforces that dependent care issues are not strictly a female issue, and that when you support the employees in addressing those responsibilities outside of work, both male and female employees appreciate it.
Great, thank you, Kim. Okay, so we actually have two related questions coming up, which I will answer. But the first is from Daniel, who's asking how a company's policy fee is determined. And then Mindy, again, a related question. She asks, is this a fully funded benefit, meaning that the employee pays a copay but the employer pays the rest of the cost, or is there a flat fee paid by the employer for the service each year? So basically, it's a combination of employer funding with employee copays. So again, this is typically, and certainly the way that Bright Horizons packages our programming, it's an employer-sponsored program, so the employer will actually carry the majority of the cost of the program, with the employee paying a copay. And then the typical copays, you know, again, it varies by employer and what their employee populations are and their needs, but I would say typically for center-based care, the employee copay is about $15, $20 or $25 per day. And then for in-home care, it's about $4 to $6 per hour. So hopefully that answers all the questions there. Okay, Mark, we've got another one for you. You're very popular today. The question is from Stephanie, and she asks, are the caregivers Bright Horizons employees?
The in-home caregivers are not Bright Horizons employees. They work for agencies that we contract with, so most of them are local agencies. But I think that the key here is that they are employees, so we don't do the contractor model or sort of the independent contractor. They're all employees of a reputable, known local business.
Okay, great. Thanks, Mark. So, Joan, our next question is for you, and this is from Cheryl. Cheryl wants to know, if a child is ill, what criteria will a center allow, and could an employee request home care for a situation where a child was too ill for a center? So if the child is mildly ill, will a center take them? And if not, what are the criteria in order for a caregiver to be sent to the home?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it comes up frequently. Children in center-based care need to be healthy. We all understand that there is runny noses. Clear runny noses are fine. Green runny noses need to be kept home. And the center does give out information very specific about if the child has a fever, a rash, things like that, that they need to be excluded from care. And in which case, if there's a mildly ill child, they can be provided care through our in-home, and that's where a call with the caregiver in advance to let them know, share information between the parent and the caregiver to see how it is, what type of care that child needs that day if they're ill. But we can certainly do that in in-home care.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so our next question is from Bill, and again, I'm going to try and answer this one, but the question is, what insurance coverages and employer indemnification do you provide, and can we be named as an additional insured? Yeah, that's a very important question, especially from the employer perspective. So I can tell you that Bright Horizons carries umbrella liability coverage of at least $20 million in excess of our general liability, employer liability, and auto liability coverages at all times. So our insurance program covers clients for any claim coming out of the backup care program, and that's all services regardless of the network provider. And yes, all Bright Horizons clients are identified as additional insureds under the general liability, auto, and excess liability coverages. And Bright Horizons indemnifies every client for claims arising out of the Backup Care Advantage program. Okay, so I have a final question because I do want to be mindful of our time with 1 minute left. This is from Alicia, and she's asking if there are any final thoughts or key learnings from each of your perspectives. So this is for Joan, Kim, and Mark. I'll have you all answer this one. Joan, if you would start, any final thoughts or key learnings from your perspective?
Sure. What I do know is that parents tell us is that backup care is their safety net, and they really appreciate that. And also that they really appreciate that special needs children can come to our centers and our in-home care. And it's helpful for parents to connect with the center or the care provider in advance so that we can individualize the care for those children as well.
Thanks, Joan. Kim, can you add any key learnings?
Well, I think that as we've worked with organizations over the past 2 decades, we know that even if an individual in the organization feels that a particular dependent care support is quote-unquote the right thing to do, they need data to help the leadership and the decision makers understand what are they getting, what's the impact of offering that support. And I'm just really excited that this data once again illustrates the fact that there are important business outcomes from offering dependent care supports.
Great. Thanks, Kim. And Mark, over to you for your final thoughts, please.
I think one of my big takeaways is backup care is really a pretty specialized offering, and it doesn't. Not everything requires. Bigger isn't always better in every scenario, but in this case, I think the scale that we bring to the table is actually really helpful in terms of the size and the coverage of our network and the interactions that we have in customers and our ability to specialize in that in what is potentially complex service to deliver.
Thank you all very much, and thank you to our audience. That's it from us today. I hope you found the session useful and informative. If you'd like to learn more about the content we talked about today, please visit brighthorizons.com/solutions@work. And again, just look out for the follow-up email in the next few days with the PDF of the slides and the link to the white paper, Backup Care at Work, the winning case for employers and employees, which also features the 10 pillars that you heard about today. And finally, before you log off, you'll see there is a survey on your screen. So please just take a minute to complete that. That would be very helpful to us. So again, one final thank you, and until next time, take care.